Okay, we've got some big news coming out of the state of Georgia in regards to election integrity, a new meeting with new information coming out. We also have more details about the Donald Trump assassination attempt and the fact that he has chosen J.D. Vance as his vice presidential candidate. Garland Favorito is joining me today. Garland, thank you so much for joining me.
Stephen, good to be back with you. Thanks so much.
So we want to get to the bottom of this Georgia stuff, just like you do. But before we jump into that, I wanted to get your thoughts on the recent events. Donald Trump, he's giving a speech. He's very impassioned, turns his head, and shots are fired. And I don't know how to explain it other than the grace of God. Instead of, losing his head, he gets part of his ear blown off. What are your thoughts on this whole assassination attempt?
I think it's exactly what you just said, Stephen. He turned his head. That was the grace of God that he turned his head just as that shot was fired. It was incredible. Otherwise, we would have been talking about something totally different and tragic, and it would have been just awful. But I think it was an incredible blessing. I really, truly believe it was a miracle right from God that he had some divine protection and some divine intervention. And he had to be protected from this Secret Service that was at worst case or at best case completely negligent. We know that, and I'm sure you've seen the videos, that they were alerted, or at least the ground police were alerted 3 or 4 minutes in advance of the shooting, that this shooter was on the roof, Thomas Matthew Crooks. And we know now, if I looked at the videos over the weekend, I've been studying this over and over again, and I realized that the snipers, the police snipers, who were just on guard in the beginning as the rally started, but they were in a crouched shooting position at least a minute before the shots were fired. So therefore, they had honed in on that shooter and were not allowed to take him out before he started shooting. So I think that's the story that's being covered up by the national mainstream news media right now. But it's all a blessing to God, from God. And, Trump's going to be stronger than ever now. It's just really, I think it's deflated the opposition to the point where I've heard they're even already resigned to the fact that Donald Trump's going to have a second term.
Yeah, there's a top Democrat, according to the Daily Mail. He wants to remain anonymous. He is telling everybody in upper leadership to prepare for Donald Trump. I don't know whether that means start preparing impeachment articles or prepare, in the sense of we're going to lose, let's move forward with a different agenda. One of the concerns a lot of people have, and you're running into this with the election integrity down in Georgia, is the FBI that's now going to be investigating this. They're the same FBI that raided his home. They're the same FBI that we believe had some infiltration into January 6th, and on and on and on. The same FBI that said that parents that care about what their children hear at school are domestic terrorists. So it's hard to fully trust organizations that have broken your trust.
Amen. Really, who on earth, who has half a brain, would believe that the Biden Justice Department is going to conduct a legitimate investigation when the Biden Justice Department has been doing everything they possibly can to get Trump out of the race with all these false charges against him? So it's a disgusting, ridiculous situation that I think it's going to unfold a lot over the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Okay, so when you and I left off, the election committee down there in Fulton County had publicly announced their inability to produce 380,761 voting day ballot images, as well as publicly admitting 17,000 recount ballot images had gone missing or never existed. There was this huge gasp for air all across the country. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. And then it seems like nothing really happened. And then you guys forced them to schedule another meeting. From there, help my listeners understand what's going on down in Georgia.
Well, that's correct, Stephen. So first of all, it was actually the Fulton County Board. And as a result of the state election board, the Fulton County Board were missing over 1 million election records for the 2020 election. And that's just the ballot records that produce the results. That doesn't count all the missing paperwork or inaccurate paperwork. And we laid that out for them. The last meeting, in the May meeting, the Secretary of State's office attempted to cover all that up and protect Fulton County. It's very ironic because we have a Republican Secretary of State and Democrats in control of Fulton County, but that's the way it was. So there were, in addition to those that you mentioned, there were over 500,000 SHA files missing. A SHA file is what we call a secure hash algorithm. The SHA file has a value that identifies the ballot image as being authentic. So it authenticates the ballot image the same way as you write a check and you sign your signature, then that authenticates your check. It's very, very similar concept. Those were missing. There were 20,000 votes that had no tabulator tapes. There were votes on ballots that had no tabulator tapes. That's not possible. And then they had evidence showed that they had backfilled 16 or 17,000 votes in order to make the results match up, which they did. And we don't know where they came from, but the request was made from Fulton County Election Director Rick Barron to the elections group's Ryan Macias, the CTCL funded elections group, for them to figure out what was wrong. Well, why would Fulton County be doing that? So all of that was covered up. And then in this last meeting, we had a few exciting things happen. First of all, at the May meeting, the 15 people got up to request that one of the Republican board members resign because he was basically in bed with Secretary of State, and he was a lobbyist who, we're not supposed to have lobbyists on this board. And he did. 3 days later, apparently the Speaker asked him to resign. He did. Speaker of the House has that particular seat appointment. The governor has one, the lieutenant governor has one, and the Democrat and Republican parties each have one. So he was replaced by a new individual named Janelle King. We thought she would be good. We didn't know how good she would be, but she exceeded our wildest expectations, as well as the senator from Lieutenant Governor's pick, Rick Jeffries. He was also added to the board recently. So now we have a majority board who actually wants election integrity. And it's the first time that I can ever recall in the 20 years of going down the board meeting that we have, board members that actually want to work in the best interest of the voters of Georgia. So that was all good. And as a result of all that, there was still some jockeying around, but Dr. Jan Johnson was able to give us some time to present this case, which is called SEB 2023-025, and that is the case of all these certified votes that have missing source records. And that was carried on for years by Kevin Moncla and Joe Rossi, who initiated the complaint. And then they selected 3 experts to speak for them at this particular meeting. because they had never gotten an opportunity to speak. So I addressed the board with and explained three things. One is how the voting system actually works, what a real investigation would have done, and what the Secretary of State told the board that was false. And then we had Philip Davis, who is a 30-year career image analyst who has analyzed these ballot images inside and out. He testified, as well as Clay Parikh, who's a 20-year cybersecurity expert with 7 years, years of testing 7 different voting systems. So, and then top that off with Harry McDougall, who asked them questions, opened and closed. And we had a presentation there that you can see up on the voterja.org press release tab. It's all linked in there. But that presentation just blew them away. I don't think they were expecting anything like that. And then we went back to the Fulton County board on Thursday and challenged them to have the experts there at their next meeting so that they can explain what the difference that from between what they found and what the board members had been told by their own election staff. So all in all, it was a great week. They were the final coup de grace came Friday when they had to reconvene to close out the meeting properly and make sure all those rules actually were passed and our evidence stayed on the record, because the meeting was erroneously left open and wasn't closed properly. So that all took place, and it was a great blessing that week. And then turn around the next day, and we had the blessing in Butler. So that was quite a series of days for us.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to hold names and numbers in my mind. So you might have to help me. Okay. So sure. The first number, Garland, you said something about 1 million. What was that? 1 million extra ballot, or what was the million? There
were 1 million missing records. So an election record, and generally they fall into 4 or 5 categories: the ballot images, the SHA files that authenticate those images, the tabulation tapes, and there those were 3. Excuse me. Those are 3 examples of. Yes, thank you. Of the types of missing records that are still unaccounted for even today.
Okay, and then I think the next number you said was around 500,000. What was the 500,000?
Well, those were part of the million, and those are what we call the SHA files. They are the secure hash algorithm that identifies the ballot images being authentic. So the way that works is you when the ballot image is created, a standard hashing algorithm runs. Typically, I think this is used from the National Institute of Testing, Standards and Testing, and it creates what we call a digital signature, which is a value that authenticates that ballot image. Now, the concept is that if somebody changes the ballot image, then because that's a unique identifier, if you ran that same algorithm again, which is a standard NIST algorithm, then you would get a different value, and therefore it would show you that the image is fraudulent. So those were all missing. So there's no way to authenticate the ballot images that Fulton County provided us as being the accurate ballot images of the 2020 election.
Okay. And then I think there was something else, but the one that you said that really caught my attention was you said something about around 20,000 fake ballots or injected ballot. What was that?
Well, there were 2 things. One was the 20,000 votes were on ballots that had missing tabulator tapes.
Okay, that's what it was. Okay, so what are those?
All in-person votes should have a tabulator tape. So in other words, let's say if it was an in-person vote, precinct votes, at the end of the evening, they tabulate the results for that precinct and they post the results on the door. And what's posted on the door is a tabulator tape. And that's the evidence that the system was tabulated. And they don't have those for 20,000 votes that are on, so 20,000 votes on ballots, or 20,000 ballots have no record that they were tabulated. So where did they come from if they didn't come from a tabulator? That's the big question. And then you have the other issue of them backfilling information into the results, ballots into the results, but these ballots didn't have any original scan logs, so it appears that they backfilled unscanned ballots into the results. So that's some of the things that are wrong with the Fulton County 22 election that are still unexplained after more than 3.5 years.
Yeah. So, okay. So going back to the backfilled ones, as you called them, you know, in several of the swing states, we go to bed, Donald Trump is up by tremendous numbers. By morning time, he's down by tremendous numbers. You know, I've seen over on the Gateway Pundit videos that they purchased where they show vans showing up with boxes of ballots, I believe in Wisconsin. Georgia, we saw those suitcases that were pulled out. You know, there's just, you know, and then down in Georgia, they tell us there's a water pipe that's burst, and you know, it's a danger to the ballots or to the people, and it ends up being what, a leaky toilet or something like that.
That's great.
Do you suspect that there's any foul play where they were, you know, putting these backfill in, or is the backfill after they supposedly have the final number?
Well, it appears that the backfill came after they had the final number, and then they needed more to balance out or to reconcile back to the original results. There were 16 and 17,000 votes short. So that's what it appears that happened. You know, they had the same situation here in Georgia with the truck and ballots coming in. I just talked to a lady who witnessed all that in 2020. I just talked with her on Friday, and she was at the state election board meeting. She was describing to me a little bit about what she saw, which is very consistent with what you described in Wisconsin and other states. I think Michigan and Pennsylvania had the same thing. Ironically, all these battleground states all appear to be subverted the correct way, or the same way, excuse me.
Okay. I'm sure you saw this, but and I can't remember his last name. I apologize, but there was this truck driver up near Pennsylvania who said that he had a semi-truck full of pre-done ballots, and it took 3.5 years for the USPS to say, yes, he did take a large load from this place to this place. We confirm it, but we have no idea where that trailer disappeared to. A friend of mine, Tony Schaefer, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer, he was put on that investigation. They were making tremendous progress. And then Bill Barr called him personally and said, you must drop this. And then all of a sudden that investigation disappeared. Very, very suspicious. But again, as you mentioned, you guys have been at this for over 3 years. Over 3 years later, the USPS comes out and says, oh, yeah, that Jesse truck driver that you guys drug through the mud, he did, in fact, drive this particular trailer down, but we don't know where the trailer is.
Well, right, Stephen, and that's just not just your opinion. That's what you just described is actual court record. And that came up, and probably one of the reasons why the USPS finally had to come forward with the information was the fact that that all came out in the Jeffrey Clark trial in D.C. I was there as an expert witness in that, and Tony Schaefer was scheduled to testify at that. It turns out that Harry Horry testified in addition to Tony, and I think Tony didn't really need to testify because Harry was there and heard exactly what you just described as at least we'll call it an eyewitness. He was an ear witness because he heard the whole conversation with Bill Barr on the line, telling Tony Sheffer basically to stand down.
Wow. Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. Another thing that I wanted to understand, you mentioned around 16,000 ballots were backfilled. Is that just Fulton County, or is that the entire state of Georgia?
That's just Fulton County, but that was enough to change the results for the entire state of Georgia. Fulton County here is the largest, most populous county in Georgia, and it represents about 10% of the votes that are cast in an election. So that election was, we're talking about 17,000 votes. The election, I think I mentioned, was 11,779 margin of victory, and that was the presidential race. The U.S. Senate race also was just a few thousand more from being avoided. David Perdue was only a few thousand votes more short than from avoiding a runoff. So it's a incredibly significant number, and that's just one of the numbers. There's actually 4 numbers in the complaint, totaling up to 58,000 ballots altogether that have no source justification.
Wow. Okay. I believe I know the answer to this, but I've been wanting to ask. At the same time, I was watching the Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Arizona. Arizona became a really big focus because people like Carrie Lake were being very, very boisterous. You had the Cyber Ninja and the other group that came in, the paid audit. But during that time, the thing that I noticed was it seems like the people that were blocking the truth or access to information, access to ballots, ballot images, voter rolls, adjudication files, the Splunk, I can't remember, the Splunk files, something like that. What is it?
Probably the log files.
Yes.
Log files.
Yes. All of that was being blocked by Republicans, not Democrats. So as you've been going through, I know that you mentioned that Fulton County is a largely Democrat area, but were you running into, other than Brad Raffensperger, were you running into higher up Republicans that were blocking you?
Well, the other Republican that is really in cahoots with Brad Raffensperger is the Attorney General, Chris Carr. He is basically kind of doing lapdog work for Brad Raffensperger. Brad Raffensperger wants him to file a brief to try to oppose unsealing ballots for the people of Georgia. Chris Carr will write the brief to do that. So he is also a serious problem here in Georgia. The governor has been a little bit less of a problem lately, so he's actually been cooperative and helpful to some degree, which hasn't always been the case.
Okay. And didn't some pretty significant reform happen when it comes to voting in the state of Georgia? Maybe update us on that.
Yeah, we passed major legislative improvements. And we passed some a couple of years ago, House Senate Bill 2021 in 2021. I'm sorry, Senate Bill 202 in 2021. Sorry. And then this year we passed several bills, one on Senate Bill 189. But they have instituted quite a few improvements. I'll try to give you a few just real quickly. They have now banned outdoor drop boxes. You can only drop a ballot off at the precinct during business hours or at a polling location or the elections office. They banned private money coming into counties, both indirect and direct. No more Zuckerbucks in Georgia, although he's trying to get in here a different way now. They have made ballots public record. They have improved the chain of custody in handling batches of ballots, or actually these cases of ballots. Containers, ballot containers, the chain of custody is improved, sign-off and sealing procedures. That's better. They have passed a rule to make sure that all votes are tabulated. If they came in prior to election day, they have to be tabulated by 8 o'clock on election night. That's another great change. Ballot security paper we have now with visible watermarks. Another really good change. And all election workers have to be U.S. citizens. If you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote, why don't you have to be a U.S. citizen to handle 500,000 electronic ballots? So those are some of the improvements that we have made legislatively in the last 2 years. So my hat's off to the legislature worked really hard on these to get them done.
Okay, wow, yeah, that's a lot, especially in the face of, Hillary Clinton's lawyer, Mark Elias. He was just able to reinstitute the drop boxes, unmanned, unwatched drop boxes up there in Wisconsin. My guess is we may see a different outcome in Georgia because of these big changes that you just listed off.
Yeah, I think that will help secure the 2024 election, Stephen. It's still not perfect. We still have the machines. And, what we really want to do is unplug Georgia up there. So unplug Georgia from the voting machines. But we've made tremendous strides from where we were in 2020.
Okay. Final question. I appreciate you updating my community. And I hope this video will be shared because people are very curious about Georgia. Have the 2020 ballots been destroyed, number one? And number two, even if we don't get the outcome we want, by applying all the pressure you guys have, do you think it's going to lead to a free and fair election in 2024?
Well, it certainly is going to help. They know that we're watching.
Okay.
And when they know that we're watching, and they know that we're getting smarter than we were in 2020. So I think that is going to help secure that election. And the ballots, I think, this Fulton County has told everybody they still have them. So I don't think they've been destroyed. We still want to see them, and we're putting tremendous pressure on to get them to get us to see the ballots. So that's kind of where we stand. And all things we're looking much better for this year than we did 4 years ago, but still not perfect. Still got a ways to go. We still have got to get rid of these unverifiable voting systems. So, but that's kind of a nutshell where I think we are right now, which I think is certainly an improvement.
Yes. Oh, it sounds like it. Well, continue to put the pressure on. Your vote matters because it affects my vote. And so I appreciate everything that you and your team have done. If people want to follow you online or learn more, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. So it's voterga.org. This is we're a nonpartisan nonprofit. All donations are tax deductible. You can get a ton of information out there. You can see all about our legal cases, our press releases. You can watch press conferences. It's fascinating. You could just spend hours there if you're interested in Georgia election integrity. But the one thing I want to mention is that, as you already know, we are a volunteer organization. All donations are used for expenses. And no one takes a salary here. So that's important. I'm retired. I'm living off my retirement. And we just want to save Georgia. And hopefully we can save America in the process and perhaps the free world.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that you can. Hey, thank you so much. Keep up the good fight, and we'll have you on in the future. But thank you again for coming on.
Looking forward to it, Stephen. Thanks for having me back so soon.